Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, the current session focuses on the issues and problems of prescriptive grammar. I hope and expect by the end of this session you would understand, with reference to the grammar of the times, what were the problems and issues that were faced. Well, my dear students, while acknowledging the results that were attained by the 18th century grammarians and the reforms that they brought, it is necessary also to emphasize the serious limitations that their work had. The greatest limitation that these grammarians had was that they did not recognize the importance of usage. What I'm trying to explain is that, language is something that is used by people. It is people who give it a shape and a form. It is people who give it an approval or a disapproval. If people use it in a certain way, then that is what becomes that language. And if they do not use a certain aspect or a certain way of language, then that disappears. However, these grammarians, in their blind pursuit of rules and regulations, and in their extreme desire to reform the language, they simply forgot how important is the usage. They actually did not realize and also refused to acknowledge that changes in language are very, very impulsive and sometimes unreasonable. You cannot give a logic for everything that happens in language. Sometimes there is no logic, no rationality behind the way a certain linguistic item is used. Their weakness or their limitation was that they tried to approach every problem of grammar through rules and regulations and through logic. Another issue that was faced was that actually they tried to impose authority. They would prescribe, they would not suggest. And the question of describing was simply out of question. They would prescribe, they would use their authority, they would say a yes or no on it, and they would try to give the form and shape to language that they would think is correct. Hence, the constant attempt was to legislate one construction into use and, in that way, rejecting the other. Out of the two rules, they would say rule A is correct and rule B is incorrect. So the approval would be for only use A. The possibility of using both the rules, side by side in language as per choice was not available. In other words, I can say that no recognition was shown for the legitimacy of divided usage, which means there can be different options, there can be different possibilities of use, and people can use as they like it. So, for instance, Noah Webster said, when they refused to base their statements on the facts of current usage at that time, they were actually refusing to preserve an agreement between the books and practice. What Webster means by that is they were giving the rules that could be written in the books of grammar that they were writing at that time. But every time they would refuse and reject a rule that was being used in the society, actually they were creating a gap between the two. That is, the books and the practice of the people. That is, the rules and the usage. They were contributing very much to create and perpetuate differences between the written and spoken language in this way. Because the rules that they would give, because now the schools were available for people, now there were more people who were sending their children to schools, now education was more, widespread, now publications were, available in a variety. So, the written text, of course, was abundant. And the rules that they were giving at that time could be followed for that. But what about the spoken text? What about the spoken discourse, I would say? And in a way, they were creating a gap between the two. Now, why were they doing so? The root cause of this was ignorance of the processes of linguistic change. The grammarians of the time were not specialized people with specialized knowledge of the changes happening in a language. So this ignorance led them towards that. The historical study of English also was still in its infancy. So, there was not much insight into the processes of language change. Overall, what I would say is, though the materials were rapidly becoming available and a lot of work was being done on grammar, they did not realize, the importance of the usage, which created the major problem.